D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David Janes here with you on Tuesday morning. Willie Donick will be along shortly. The Nashville Predators wrap up their 3-game road trip against the Boston Bruins tonight. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5. Right here on 1025, 1063 The Game. Tim Hasselbeck will join us in the next segment, roughly 11:30, as we get into the NFL Combine, the NFL Draft, free agency, all of the things with Tim Hasselbeck. Derek, how are you today? Do you have any grievances that you would like to air before today's program starts?
I'm doing well. I guess I got a grievance, but non-grievance. It's not even a grievance. It's just a, how you can be more, like use things for multiple uses, using something for, multiple tasks.
Okay.
Let's say that. Like, say you can use a broom for several different things. You can use a broom for killing a spider. You can use the broom for sweeping. You can use the broom for getting, spider webs off the ceiling. So it's multiple uses.
You can use a broom to chase away a cat.
Exactly. Absolutely. You better, hopefully that ain't a mean cat and come back on you, because that wouldn't be good. But whoever invented, and that's easy to look up, whoever invented tape, they're geniuses. They are
the smartest person in the world.
Freaking geniuses, man. Because tape has like a billion uses. You can use tape for anything. Like, if you were to come into the studio right now, Adam, as you see, my headphones has what? Tape on it, wrapped up. I don't want to go buy another pair. I spent over $100 on these. I want to get my wares, okay? So I put tape to keep the ear part.
Did you used
together.
to put tape in your shoes?
I did it all. Back in the day. I ain't gonna go to that story because that's a long, funny story. But
shout out Dr. Horace Day. He's the one who invented tape.
Horace Day. And then if you look, I have this this lighting mechanism to brighten up everything, because I'm a dark-skinned brother, and over the stream it looks more dark than anything. So I gotta get the light, and it allows you, the viewer, to see me a lot better. I even got tape around that because I broke it. It's like, I don't want to go buy another. If I can use the tape that we have readily in this building or at my house, I'm going to use it. Why throw it out? I told David, I said, man, listen, if tape is used correctly, you can put together a plane if tape is used correctly. Okay, so
amen to that one.
Hey, listen, tape, I can't do any. I mean, tape is like bread to me. You got to have it.
Good to know.
Yeah, speaking of bread, I was listening to you too, Nick, and y'all were talking about the bread. So
now you know how to make bread.
Absolutely.
All right.
So that's my sort of, I don't know what you call it, but is it a PSA?
Sure.
We're going to go with PSA.
Yeah, PSA.
All right. Well, we know that Derek loves tape now. And if you love tape too, let us know.
Do you like highlight tape? That's the real question.
If you have a specific kind of tape you like, duct tape, masking tape, packing tape, you let us know. 615-737-1025. It's franchise tag day in the NFL. The deadline is 3 p.m. Central. And late last night, word came down from Adam Schefter that the Vikings are unlikely to franchise tag Sam Darnold. According to Schefter, Minnesota is still interested in working to re-sign Darnold, but it is likely to be without any tag. So it appears that Sam Darnold will enter free agency, and we'll see how much money he's going to make if he were to have been tagged. The franchise tag for quarterbacks this season is roughly $40.2 million. The question is, will a team pay Sam Darnold more than that in free agency, as multiple teams attempt to sign Sam Darnold? We know that there are people around here who would love for the Titans to sign Sam Darnold. As I've said many times, anytime you bring up the name Sam Darnold to Jared Stillman, he gets a little tingle in his loins. That's my PG way of saying a certain thing. But Jared gets a little tingle in his loins anytime you bring up Sam Darnold. And I'm sure much of his program today will be devoted to Sam Darnold. So, Derek,
yes,
what do you make of the Vikings' decision, according to Adam Schefter, that they are unlikely to tag Sam Darnold, but still hope to re-sign him?
I think it's their way of allowing him to potentially test the market, because I think the last thing you want to do, even when you're tagging someone, is to overpay for them. Listen, it only takes one team. Do I believe that Sam Darnold has displayed $40 million talent? No, I don't think he has consistently over his career. No, but it only takes one team to think that he is the guy that can either keep us, in that playoff hunt, and something goes our way in the playoffs, an interception here, a return here, and we win the game. So it's either a team like that believes he can, as long as we get good quarterback play, we should be all right. Or a team that thinks like Sam Darnold is who he was this year, and not looking at his past years prior to coming to Minnesota, which one would believe was a perfect situation for him. But I understand, even in a perfect situation, you got to go out there and do the job that is tasked to you. And Sam Darnold, for the most part, 98% of the time, or 90% of the time, he went out and did it. The last 10%, the last 2 games of the season, he didn't. Now, was that true Sam Darnold, what we saw the last 2 games? Or was that just, hey, a guy had a bad game 2 weeks in a row? Just chalk it up to that. I don't know. But this is Minnesota's way, I believe, at saying, listen, we're not going to be the front runners on this. We're not going to tag you. We're going to allow you to test the market. Another team does this too. Baltimore does this. They do this with a lot of their players, even their key players. I've seen them do it, where they're like, okay, we do want you here, but go test the market. Because the last thing good organizations want to do is what? Overpay for a potentially aging product or aging asset. So Minnesota's allowing him to go out and test the market. Now, if the market come back and say, hey, listen, he's worth $45 million, now Minnesota has to rethink. Is JJ McCarthy healthy? Is he ready to go? And do we believe in him? If we do, then okay, thank you, Sam. We appreciate what you did last year, but go and make your money. But if not, then that's when Minnesota got to think like, okay, is it worth paying him 45, or would he take a discount at 42 per, And it's not even the per, it's the guarantee money, That's going to be, I think, the sticking point with anybody. I mean, whatever negotiation he has is the guarantee money. So is it a smart move by Minnesota? I think so. Because again, the last thing you want to do as an organization is to be a front runner and overpay for someone that had 1 year. And it was a damn good year, but had 1 year. We don't know what's going to happen after this season. Is he more of the last 2 games, or is he not? Which one is it?
The last 2 games that Darnold played, the loss to the Vikings in week 18, the loss to the Lions in week 18, and the loss to the Rams in the playoffs. The Vikings lost those games by a combined score of 58-18. He threw a combined 23 off-target throws and took 11 sacks in those 2 games. So when the lights were brightest for Sam Darnold, he failed. And Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings coach, in defense of Darnold, said you have to look at the overall body of work. And he did have a great statistical season. Unfortunately for him, he struggled when most people were paying attention. I remain skeptical about Sam Darnold. I am not going to be one of those people who says Sam Darnold sucks, because I don't think Sam Darnold sucks, to use the word that Jared likes to use all of the time. I don't think that Sam Darnold sucks. I think Sam Darnold is a solid quarterback in the NFL. I remain skeptical that if he were to come to the Tennessee Titans, that he would make them demonstrably better. He would help, but I have enough questions about the rest of the team that I'm not sure how much he uplifts the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Teron Davenport has made this comparison. Jared has made this comparison about Alex Smith and what Alex Smith meant to the Chiefs before they went to Patrick Mahomes, and how glowingly Mike Borgonzi talks about Alex Smith and his influence on getting the Chiefs to where they are right now. And both Teron Davenport and Jared have said that Sam Darnold could be the Titans version of Alex Smith. That could be true. I just get concerned about the amount of money it's probably going to take to sign Sam Darnold. I'm not sure he's going to be worth that. And when you consider the other options available in free agency, he is head and shoulders above the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Titans could go out, for example, and sign Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was fine last season. The Jets didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
He had some solid individual numbers. You're not going to be committing to Aaron Rodgers long term because he's in his early 40s. And to me, I feel like that mitigates the risk because you're not tied to him for very long. So it's a good question. I mean, we'll see what happens when the tag deadline hits at 3 p.m. Central, but the reporting is that Sam Darnold is unlikely to be franchise tagged by the Minnesota Vikings, which will allow him to enter free agency. Although, according to Adam Schefter, they are still interested, the Vikings are, in working to re-sign Darnold. The other player that was tagged yesterday, we talked about this briefly at the end of the show, is T. Higgins. T. Higgins has been tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals for the second year in a row. I found this to be interesting, Derek. According to ESPN, in recent years, being franchised in consecutive seasons has usually led to a long-term deal. 6 of the past 7 players who were franchised in consecutive seasons signed a long-term deal that year. The most recent, other than T. Higgins, was Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin was tagged in consecutive years by the Buccaneers. He signed with the Buccaneers. Back in 2021, Dak Prescott was franchised twice by the Cowboys. He signed a long-term deal with the Cowboys. So 6 of the past 7 players who have been franchised in consecutive seasons signed a long-term deal with the team that put the tag on them 2 years in a row. But you said this yesterday, you have a problem with teams being able to do this.
Yeah, for one, okay, let's go back. Godwin gets tagged 2 years in a row, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't have the stigma of not wanting to spend money, not wanting to play players. They don't have that stigma. Guess who does?
The Bengals.
The Cincinnati Bengals. Dak Prescott. As much as Jerry Jones hooping high and say all these things, what does Jerry end up doing? Paying his guy. He ends up paying them. That's if you are a dude, he end up paying you no matter what. So you can't say that about the Dallas Cowboys. The common denominator in this is Cincinnati don't like paying people. So I would be alarmed by this. Again, either you get a contract done. You had a whole year last year, a whole year after you franchise tagged him. You had a whole year to work on the deal. This is your guy. This guy allows you to continue to play on offense the way you need to play when Jamar Chase is injured. T. Higgins is a number 1 receiver. He proved it. Now he has to stay on the field a little bit more too. He gets hurt a little bit, a little bit too much for me too. But he's proven that he's the number 1 guy. Okay, you franchise tagged him last year. You didn't get a deal worked out at the beginning of the season. Work out a deal with him. If you want him there, work out a deal. You know how to finagle the money. You know how to do it. Work out a deal because your team is better with T. Higgins on it. Because that trio that they have on offense is probably the best trio in the whole NFL. And why would you want to damage that for a team that is clamoring for a Super Bowl? Why would you mess with it? You've done it before and see what happens to you. See what happened to you. you end up regressing as a team when you didn't sign the guys back that you needed to sign. You regressed as a team. So to me, the NFL, and I said this yesterday, this is one of these deals. I don't know when the next collective bargaining come up. I'm sure it's, at least 6 years down the line. This should be a point, a topic point for the NFLPA. You should not be able to franchise tag a guy in consecutive years. You just can't do it. You can't put a tag on it, because if you can't work out a deal that year when you put the first tag on them, the likelihood of you working out a deal and that second go around is not good, even though there have been 7 situations where it has happened. But again, I pointed out to you 2 of them that if you look at the organization has no problem with paying people. They may stall for a while, but they have no problem with paying. Cincinnati has a problem with paying people. So to me, I think it's disrespectful to T. Higgins. Let the man go and test the market. And if you want him, then make a counter offer. But don't hold the man financially hostage, because you don't know what you're doing, or you don't know what you want to do. You had a whole year to know that, to figure that out.
We'll see what happens there. Well, we know what happens there.
Yeah.
T. Higgins will be there, but we'll see if it leads to a long-term deal. Recent history suggests that it will. Some other news around the NFL, no surprise here. With Aaron Rodgers no longer a member of the New York Jets, the team is prepared to part with his favorite wide receivers, Davante Adams and Allen Lazard. The Jets have given permission to Lazard to seek a trade before the start of the new league year. Adams also has permission to speak with other teams. So no surprise here. We'll see where Aaron Rodgers ends up. Smart money would suggest, Derek, that wherever Aaron Rodgers ends up, one of those 2 wide receivers will likely be there.
Yes.
Because they follow him like a lovesick puppy.
Pretty much so. But again, I say Aaron is not in that position of strength anymore. So, he can't demand a Davante Adams. If I'm Davante, it's like, no, I don't want to go there with you. I don't. Because if you're going to Tennessee, yeah, you may win some more games, but are you a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Even with Aaron Rodgers on your team? No, you're not. So if I'm Adams, I'm like, why am I? No, I'm going to someone where it's more than likely I will be in the playoffs and I will make a deep run. Green Bay, and there are a few other teams out there.
According to Alec Lewis, who reports on the Minnesota Vikings for The Athletic, he had this story from the Combine. This was published yesterday, so before the news that Sam Darnold is unlikely to be tagged. According to Alec Lewis, he says the Las Vegas Raiders and the New York Giants, according to league sources, are the 2 likeliest landing spots for Darnold. But the Tennessee Titans and Pittsburgh Steelers could also vie for Darnold's services. So the Raiders and the Giants. Now, I know that Darnold had a rough go of it in New York with the Jets. So I think it's led people to wonder if he would want to avoid going back to that market, albeit on a different team. The Steelers are interesting. We talked about this yesterday, Derek. The Steelers are interesting because of those teams, the Giants, the Raiders, the Titans, and the Steelers. The Steelers feel like the team best positioned to actually win with Sam Darnold on the roster because they've got a good defense. They've got a veteran head coach in Mike Tomlin. They have pieces on offense. I don't know exactly how I feel about George Pickens as a wide receiver. He's a boomer bust type of guy.
He's a hell of a talent.
Hell of a talent, but can he put it all together, right?
Consistently, yes.
But it seems like from an environment standpoint. So let's look at those quickly. Let's look at those 4 teams. Titans, Raiders, Steelers, Giants. Is there any competition in your mind that the Steelers providing the best environment for Sam Darnold? Because the Vikings environment played a big part in the season that he had last season. So of those 4 teams, is it the Steelers? Are they the runaway there in terms of the environment they can provide Sam Darnold to be successful?
I wouldn't say they are a runaway. I would say that, you know, they got some steps on the next closest
Who would you have
team.
behind the Steelers?
Man, see, I don't know where the Raiders sit.
Yeah.
I know people are, well, Tom's going to be. Tom hadn't proven. See, here's the thing. Tom hadn't proven that he's a good executive at no point.
It seems like he might have been played by Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, so it's like, what makes you think that Oakland, well, not Oakland, excuse me, Las Vegas Raiders would be a team that you would think is sort of on the upcline just because Tom Brady's there? He hasn't proven. I'm not saying he wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying he hasn't proven that he can do the job. We don't even know what he does, in regards to having a percentage of the team. We don't know what decisions that he's making. So I would put the Raiders a little bit lower. Now, the Giants have some pieces. They do.
Malik Neighbors
They got Malik Neighbors first and foremost. They got some good defensive pieces. They need to upgrade their offensive line. Is Daboll the guy? I don't think the GM's the guy by judging by what he did last year. Is Daboll the guy? I don't know, but I think them and the Titans are sitting in a similar position. I believe. I think the Steelers are, some steps ahead of the other team, and if you want to go and get some immediate success, then go to Pittsburgh. It's been proven. It's a proven commodity. But I think the Titans and the Giants are sort of ticking upward. The Giants, based upon the personnel that they have, the young personnel, and I think the Titans, based upon the structure that we now see in the front office. It seems like everything is cohesive. So I think both of them have a bunch of minuses, but they do have their pluses as well. So yeah, they are about 4 or 5 steps ahead of the Titans and the Giants, but I put the Titans and the Giants a little bit closer to one another.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on franchise tag deadline day, 3 p.m. Central. Sam Darnold reportedly unlikely to be tagged by the Minnesota Vikings. We will bring you any and all news throughout the course of the program. Coming up next, Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, will join us. We'll talk about Sam Darnold and more with him. But before we do, tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt men's basketball as the Commodores take on Arkansas at Memorial Gym with a 9 o'clock tip-off and the pregame show starting at 8:30. Coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. D. Mace Vingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. A nice impromptu visit there from Jeff Fisher.
Yes. I need to ask him a favor with the for the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. So he's gracious enough to do a video for me about, my career and my time here in Nashville. So I'm excited about that in mid-July.
Joining us on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, ESPN NFL analyst Tim Hasselbeck. Tim, we started the show by talking about the report from Adam Schefter that the Minnesota Vikings are unlikely to franchise tag Sam Darnold before this afternoon's deadline. Schefter also added that the Vikings are hopeful that they could still re-sign Darnold, but with this news that he is unlikely to be tagged by the Vikings, where do you think things stand now with Sam Darnold in the open market?
The fact that they remain hopeful to sign him makes me think that maybe the trade market, in terms of a tag and trade, or just the market in general for Darnold, maybe isn't as strong as some people think, probably myself included. That's what it makes me think. Now, I would just say this, and this is kind of as this news is coming out. If I'm Sam Darnold and the money is even close, I'm not going back to Minnesota. Like, Minnesota is telling him, you threw 35 touchdowns last year. You were awesome, but JJ McCarthy is going to be our quarterback. and so, like, if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm saying, like, it's clearly not here that is going to be my, NFL home. Let me go find it somewhere else. Like, maybe it's Pittsburgh, maybe it's Nashville, maybe it's Indianapolis, maybe it's Las Vegas. Like, there are other places that I think you could look at it and say, all right, would they commit to Sam Darnold at least 3 years financially to be their starting quarterback? I think it's a good shot. Those teams I just mentioned would. And so, again, if the money's even close, I'm looking elsewhere.
Let me ask you the question I just asked Derek before we brought you on. So there have been reports that the Giants could be interested in Darnold, the Steelers could be interested in Darnold, the Raiders, even the Titans. When you're looking around the league at teams that need a quarterback, if the Vikings are out of it, which team, in your opinion, provides Sam Darnold with the best environment to replicate the success he had last season?
I would probably say Pittsburgh, because they've got I just think it's a good team. That doesn't mean they're going to, go to the, divisional round, or doesn't mean they're going to go to the AFC Championship game. But if you just look at, the team that I would consider is in the market for a quarterback, which they are. Look, you have a really good receiver in George Pickens. They're probably going to address receiver, as it stands now. They probably need to address running back also. But defensively, they're really good. So, and obviously there's stability in coaching and the organization in general. So that to me seems like it would be a good fit in terms of, he could play at a starter level and prove that he belongs. I think, if he were to go somewhere, like to the Titans, I think it's just fair to say, like, all right, like, well, what does the team look like? Where are they with the offensive line? How good is the defense? Is the receiving core what you would want? A team that I would say, if you don't find exactly what you're looking for, would make me really curious, would be the Colts. So, if we could say, hey, money was even, I may favor the Colts. Now, the Colts, may still feel like there's some level of interest in maybe, building around Richardson for the future. But I think that time has passed, whether they admit it or not. And so, that could end up being a decent spot.
Tim Hasselbeck joining us on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick. Tim, out of the NFL Combine, it seems like Cam Ward's stock has risen, although he did not perform or participate, I should say, at the Combine. We had Teron Davenport on yesterday, who was at the combine, and he said that based on his intel, if the Titans stay at number 1, he's pretty confident that Cam Ward would be their selection. So considering Sam Darnold, considering the potential of Cam Ward, who would you say is going to be better 3 years from now, Sam Darnold or Cam Ward?
Well, here's how I would say this, and I've thought about this. Is why my position on the Vikings, that they should build around Sam Darnold rather than J.J. McCarthy is this. The bust rate at quarterback is brutal. It's brutal. And so you just think of first round draft picks at the quarterback position. It's not even a 50-50 proposition. And so when you have somebody that's thrown 35 touchdown passes in a season, what that guy did is he just put a stake in the ground. He's like, look, I can do this, which is different than, we see with, a lot of other guys. And so, look, the safer bet in my mind for sure is a 27-year-old Sam Darnold. It would be different if Sam was 30 years old or 31 years old. He's younger than Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. He's a year younger than Josh Allen. Those are guys in the prime of their career. I do think we have to take into some context of the age that Sam Darnold was when he got drafted. I don't think he was even old enough to buy a beer when he was drafted by the Jets. So I think he got his first start at 21 years old. So, look, I would take Darnold. I've seen guys not pan out too many times. Look, is there a chance that Cam Ward ends up being Andrew Luck? Maybe. But there's also a chance that, there's a chance he's Jameis Winston.
We'll talk with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst and the head coach of the Ensworth Tigers. Now, Tim, before I get back into the quarterbacks, I want to ask you about T. Higgins, and not necessarily about, the money he will make and free. No, from the standpoint of this, when the new collective bargaining comes up, which I think is in another 6-7 years, it's down the line, but I'm sure they can sort of work on some things if they want some things within their the CBA now. My thing is, should you be able to tag a guy in consecutive years? Because my thing is, you tagged him the first time, okay, work out a deal. If you can't work out a deal, then teams are using this and sort of holding these guys sort of in peril. It's almost financially they're holding them, in this box where they won't allow them to go out and test the market. And if you deem the market is too high or not high enough, you want them on your team, then you pay. Do you feel that the NFL and the NFLPA need to get together and work through this?
Yeah, I do think that the whole point of the tagging was in order to give you some time to work out a new deal. The intention of the franchise tag and then how it's been used, that don't align. And then the tagging the year over year, the only thing that you could say, to kind of go against that idea, D-Mace, would be that if you look at guys that have been tagged twice, or even guys that have been tagged once, they often become the highest paid, player at that position, over a 2 and 3 year stretch. So Kirk Cousins would be a great example of a guy that he got tagged, and he didn't have the security that other guys had. But when you look at his numbers over a 3 year stretch, he's making more money than anyone else. Same thing with Dak Prescott. So, let's use T. Higgins for an example. Let's say T plays on the tag at whatever the number is called, $25 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he then is a free agent next year. And if they're going to tag him again, that number would be way higher. And then they're just not going to be able to do that, right? So now he's a free agent. He's just made $25 million. He should, as a number one receiver, end up, in the first 3 years of a deal, maybe coming close to the top of the receiver market. And so his number over a 3-4 year stretch is going to be as good as anybody's. Justin Jefferson's, Jamar Chase's, that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that there's almost not even an incentive for the NFLPA to say, hey, stop tagging guys, because the guys that play through it
Mm-hmm.
and then become free agents, their like 3-year average ends up being higher than pretty much everyone else at their position.
Yeah, I understand that point.
But the security part of it, like you're putting it on that guy to play well. But so this would be the example,
Mm-hmm.
is that like Dak Prescott had a brutal ankle injury,
Mm-hmm.
and it still happened. So the security aspect of it that guys are often concerned about, it doesn't seem to be that, like we haven't seen the catastrophic injury where a guy played on a tag, had the catastrophic injury, and then it didn't work out. Same thing with Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, I think, was tagged, had a knee injury before, like whatever the situation was. Same deal, made a ton of money through the process.
Well, I think what's going to happen is the NFL is more reactive than proactive at anything. And what's going to happen, I believe, is one of these guys is going to have a catastrophic knee injury and not be that same player. And then all of a sudden it's going to come to a head, and they're going to have to discuss it. But I understand what you're saying from the team, and sort of from the player standpoint, as far as guarantee and everything else. Now, quickly, before we get you out of here, Shedeur Sanders, that's the stuff that is coming out. What do you make of the quarterback coach, the anonymous quarterback coach, who didn't like or didn't appreciate Shedeur Sanders' arrogance, as he says, and he don't understand the culture of these players, or he doesn't like the culture of these players. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Here's what I'd say, and I think we've laughed about this in the past. Like I told you before, like there's a guy I was friends with, and we have a conversation about, Daniel Jones, and, I really wasn't even asking him for work purposes. We just kind of were talking, and he's kind of like, nope, don't like Daniel Jones. Then they end up drafting him. I'm kind of like, wait a minute, bro. Like what? Like, I just like, it hurt my feelings, and so, so like, to me, this time of year, like, look, that guy could be saying it because he actually likes Shedeur Sanders more than everybody else. So I think before I'm like, oh, hey, a guy shouldn't say that. Like, I don't agree with him blasting him, that type of thing. Like, I think we just know that this time of year, there's going to be mixed reviews on people. Sometimes they're accurate, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's to, send off a sniff in a different direction. And it's like, I think it's just like, it's what you've signed up for, and I think that, the info we're getting back, like just from the combine, where everybody kind of, goes and meets, and there's a lot of information sharing, and guys are experts and they're trying to sort through it. Like, the reality is Cam Ward's a much more physically talented thrower of the football than Shedeur Sanders. I think that's going to start to separate it. I think Shedeur Sanders physically, has limitations. I think he's got a limited arm strength. He's got limited mobility. I think he's not athletically, as impressive as some other guys. And I know we didn't do things at the combine, but I think when people get together and they talk about evaluation, there is some trust with information and things of that nature. I just think that that's what's ultimately separating guys, not, one guy's anonymous, character, assassination of a guy's, confidence or arrogance or whatever it may be.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, joining us on D-Mace, Vingit, and Donick. Tim, great stuff as always. We'll talk next week.
All right. Sounds good. See you, fellas.
Tim Hasselbeck joining us on the program, 615-737-1025. If you have any thoughts on what Tim had to say, call us, text us. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. There was something in there that he said, Derek, that I found to be very interesting, that I think would make a lot of people around here who like Sam Darnold very upset. And we'll get to that next. Before we do, this week's Nashville's Best Deal is from Brewster's Real Ice Cream in Hendersonville. See why Brewster's is a scoop above the rest with the best ice cream shakes, sundae splits, blasts, and more. Visit thegamenashville.com/deals now and get half off a $50 gift card while supplies last. Team Ace, Vingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Willie Donick expected to join us in the next hour. Also coming up at the start of the next hour, Derek Mason will reveal his top wide receiver prospects in this year's NFL draft. So looking forward to hearing what Derek has to say about the top wide receiver prospects in this draft class. But Tim Hasselbeck said something, Derek, that caught my attention, that if it were to come to fruition, I can only imagine the reaction from Jared Stillman at 2:00. We were talking about the best environments for Sam Darnold. And Tim Hasselbeck mentioned the Steelers because of the infrastructure they already have there. But then he wondered about the Colts because he's not exactly sure what the future holds for Anthony Richardson. For as much time as we've talked about Sam Darnold to the Titans, I can only imagine what the reaction would be if he signs with the Colts. So I'm not sure how realistic that is, but what do you think of the rationale that Tim had about the Colts being maybe a dark horse, no pun intended, for Sam Darnold?
It's a interesting answer. But I think Indianapolis has done this to themselves. For guys like Tim, who studies that position, extensively, who goes around, talking to these teams, and he's on ESPN, and so he's in tune with certain teams, and I think Indianapolis, as much as Tim talks about Indianapolis, I think he's in tune with them enough. But Indianapolis has done this to themselves. They benched Richardson during the season. They benched him. And for all intents and purposes, it was going to be a benching for the rest of the season. That's the way they made it seem. But then they had to do an about face. What was it, a game or two later? And put him back in the lineup? That shows unsureness, if that's a word. I'm going to make it a word.
Uncertainty?
Uncertainty. There we go. That brings about uncertainty. Are you really, truly, all in on your quarterback? You drafted him high. You moved up in the draft to get him. Are you truly committed to your quarterback, or are you not? And because of what Indianapolis did during the season, it showed a lot of people that maybe they're just not that invested in him, or they're not committed to him right now. So it leaves the door open for a potential Sam Darnold to come in and them potentially moving away from Richardson. Now, I don't think that would happen. I think that would be crazy unless somebody's giving up, the sink and the farm and everything else that goes along with it, then okay. But I would be really, it's an intriguing team that he brought, but I would be really surprised. It would almost floor me if they went out and signed Sam Darnold and then put Richardson on the trading block. But I see why Tim brought up Indianapolis because of what they did to Richardson during the season. So, if that was to happen, man, oh man, you would, Jared, it would be a 10-alarm fire for Jared, not just a 5-alarm fire. And I don't even know what a 10-alarm fire is.
I'm not sure there is one.
But it would be with Jared if indeed that happened. So, I mean, listen, Tim said it correctly about Sam Darnold in the Minnesota Vikings. And this is what I was alluding to when we discussed it right before having him on. If they're telling you they're not tagging you, they're telling you go test the market. More than likely, we're okay. We're going with our rookie, JJ McCarthy. So go test the market. And if I'm the Titans, I am not the first team that's going to hop out there. I'm not. I'm going to see how the market plays out. And then if I feel the need to jump in, I will jump in. But by no means am I leading the market. What would you lead it with? 45, 46? Would you go as far as to say, well, we want to make you in the first 3 years a highest paid quarterback? Would you be that team that's willing to do that? Or would you be a team like other really good organizations? They sit back and they calculate things before they make a move. And if you see the market and you're willing to pay it, then okay, do it. But at least you've seen the market for that particular quarterback. They said already, we want to do our due diligence. We wanted it the first, they said it about the first pick. And I even think it's more than the first pick. It's free agency too. You have to be methodical. You have to be very, very in tune with all these guys that you're going to either bring in as free agents or draft, because you got to get it right this year.
615-737-1025. We'll take your calls and texts coming up next. We'll also get into Derek's top wide receiver draft prospects. I tasked Derek with doing the homework. He has come back with said homework. He will unveil his top wide receiver prospects coming up next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. We're expecting Willie Donick shortly. The Predators are in Boston to take on the Bruins tonight. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Before we get to Derek Mason's top wide receiver draft prospects, our friend Mark from Nashville is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com. Mark, my friend, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
I appreciate that, Adam. What's up, D-Mace?
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot, man. Just calling to chat with y'all for a minute. I was sitting there listening to y'all, man, talk about Sam Darnold. Man, I'm kind of under the thinking that he's like a one-hit wonder, rather. I don't know if he could just go in and figure any offense out and be successful at it. I think his success was this past season with the Vikings. I mean, you got Jones, Hawkinson, Addison, Jefferson, O'Connell as an offensive guru. I think that's the best you're going to see of him. I don't see it happening with him. Maybe he can go to Pittsburgh and Arthur Smith can, keep him going in the right direction and keep him going. But I just wouldn't overpay for Sam Darnold. I wouldn't really see him coming here to Nashville. I think Aaron Rodgers is probably your last long bet to get down here in Nashville. All the other quarterbacks are being taken. But AD Mace, before I go, I'm just going to ask you a quick question. Have you got Luther Burton, the wideout from Missouri, on that list anywhere? Yes or no? I mean, can you kind of give me a hint? Or do you got the number one wide receiver? For some reason, D Mace, I can't even pronounce this guy's name. I'm way over. Can't figure his name out, from Arizona.
Oh, just call him Tet McMillan. Just call him Tet McMillan. That's what everybody calls him.
Oh, okay then. Okay, well I'll just do that then. But yeah.
No spoilers, Mark. You'll have to listen like everybody else.
We love you, man, but I can't spoil it, man, because people got to hear it. So I can't spoil it for him, man.
Well, I mean, D-Mace, hey, the check's coming your way, man. It'll be in your account this evening. All you got to do is tell me, man. But it's coming your way.
I think you'll like my list, man. I think you'll like my list.
We'll get to it right now, Mark. So you won't have to wait too long.
All right. See y'all, Adam. See you, D-Mace. Yep. Appreciate it, fellas.
Thanks, Mark. All right. So let's take a look. Actually, before we get to that, one texter said a couple of texts about Sam Darnold before we get to this list. One texter says on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com, I don't understand why everyone is so high on Sam Darnold. He has had one good season in his NFL career, and that was behind arguably the best offensive line in the league with the best wide receiver in the league. If he comes to the Titans, he will do nothing because we do not have an offensive line or the wide receivers he had. One texter says Rodgers wouldn't last a quarter behind that offensive line. Aaron Rodgers, that is. Another texter says, how many quarterbacks have had 14-win seasons in a fluke? I remain skeptical. Of Sam Darnold. I am not saying that his season, minus the final 2 games, was not impressive. And again, I am required by law to mention that Sam Darnold went 4-2 as a starter near the end of the 2022 season with the Carolina Panthers.
Can't forget that part.
We can't forget that part. What I will say is, again, I remain skeptical about Sam Darnold, what he would do in another situation. Again, not taking away from what he did with the Vikings, but I look at that period of time with the Panthers, that 4-2 stretch. And I'm not saying it wasn't impressive, but it doesn't blow me away. I don't sit there and go, wow, he went 4-2 for that Panthers team when the games were basically meaningless. I mean, I guess they weren't totally meaningless because they were playing in the NFC South, which was one, I believe, with a 8-9 record, I want to say. But, I don't look at that as some huge deal that he went 4-2 with the Panthers. I just remain skeptical that on another team, or specifically on the Titans, that Sam Darnold will be the quarterback that won 14 games. But we will park Sam Darnold there for a moment. So let's get to these top wide receiver prospects, Derek. You have given me 4 names. You've done your research. You looked through all of the combine stuff for those who did participate in the combine. So we'll go one by one here. The first name you gave me was Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State University, considering the incredible wide receivers who have played for that school, including Chris Sanders, despite the fact that his diploma
doesn't count anymore.
His diploma has been burned because of that one
yeah,
time he picked Michigan over. He was right to pick Michigan over Ohio State in silly underdog picks, but you lose your membership card to Ohio State if you ever pick Michigan over Ohio State. Nevertheless, Egbuka finished his career at Ohio State, the career leader in receptions and receiving yards. That's impressive, considering the caliber of receivers that have played for Ohio State. So Emeka Egbuka was the first name you gave me. What do you like about him and his NFL prospects?
And it's not that Emeka Egbuka is my first top of my board. It's just how I was looking at the guys. And I started with Emeka Egbuka and sort of finished with some other guys. But this is what I wrote about him. Great hands. He attacks the football. Really good speed. He's a physical runner. He's a combat catcher. He catches a lot of passes when guys are draped over him, even in double coverage. He's a diverse route runner. And what I mean by that, he runs every route in the route tree. There's not like, oh, he's only a deep threat or he's an underneath guy. No, Egbuka runs every route in a route tree. And that's what makes him so dangerous, is that you can't sit back and say, well, I'm going to sit on this because this is what. No, he just as quickly as he will run a out, he will run a go on you, and it will look the same. He understands spacing. And what I mean by that, he's a zone buster. He's one of those guys that reads and recognizes zone very quickly, and he finds the open space. He's sort of like that. He's sort of like Jamar Chase in a sense. Jamar Chase is really good at finding the holes in the zones very quickly. And Emeka Egbuka is the same way. Excellent, really good speed, gets the ball and get up the field north and south. He is a north-south runner, and he has explosion. So that's when I look at Egbuka, that's what I see. And he's a physical guy when he needs to be. So he's first on my list. He's not my first wide receiver, but how I sort of evaluate these guys, I went with Egbuka first. And I think he may be the oldest of the group in a sense of, because he played at Ohio State. This is his 3rd year. Tet might be a little bit older, but I think this is his 3rd year, or it may be his senior year at Ohio State. He's one of those guys that probably stayed the duration of his 4 years. And that helped him staying more than 3 years at Ohio State.
He played 4 seasons at Ohio State.
So that helped him. And then being able to still shine all while having Jeremiah Smith on the other side of you. So I think that was an added plus. I think he comes in and can be an immediate impact player for you, just like a Chase, just like a Olave, those guys that formerly came from Ohio State. So that's how I see Egbuka.
All right. So Emeka Egbuka was one of the 4 prospects you had on your list at wide receiver. Number 2, someone who's gotten a lot of play because of his performance at the 40 at the combine. Matthew Golden out of Texas ran a 4.29 40, which was the fastest recorded at the combine. What do you like about Matthew Golden other than the speed?
Other than the speed, this is how and everybody fell in love with Matthew Golden. TD and I were talking about Golden and Bond a few weeks ago, and at the time I thought Bond would be the faster runner, but it turns out that Matthew Golden is the fastest guy based upon his 4.29 40. But again, this is what I seen that popped off for me. He's a dynamic player. He's just flat out dynamic. That's just who he is. He's explosive. He may be the most explosive receiver in this year's draft. He attacks the football. He's a I'm dude. That's what he is. He's a I'm dude when it comes to the football. You know what I'm dudes are?
No.
It's mine. That ball is mine. And that's the way he attacks it each and every time. I'm an Imes dude. That ball you see in the air, I don't care if it's double covered. It's my ball, and I'm catching it. So he's one of those guys. He's really good at route running. He has the quickness. He catches while contact very well, just like Abuka. He's a contact catcher, and he's really and this is what I think puts him to me over the edge. He's a returner. He can do kick returns. I didn't see him do many punt returns. From what I see, I need to go a little bit deeper, but I know he can double as your kickoff return, especially with how the rules are now. You need a speed guy that can hit the hole and go, and he's one of those guys. So when I look at Matthew Golden, he is, based upon what I watched on film, and then mirroring that with his 4.29 40. I think his hand size were a little bit, is like 9, close to 10. So he has large hands. And he has everything that when you're talking about a prototypical wide receiver, he has it all. Now, will that translate in the NFL? I don't know. But what he has shown throughout college, the film that I watched, and I watched every touch of his or target of his this season, this dude is a flat out playmaker. He is. And I'm not surprised that he ran a 4.2 because he looks that fast on film.
He ran a 4.29 40. His hand measurements 9.5.
9.5. Yeah.
9.5. He ran a 1.49 10-yard split as well. Those were the only two drills I believe he ran at the combine. So one texter says, we need Golden. That dude's legit. Now, I don't think Matthew Golden is going to be available to the Titans unless they were to trade down, because they're not taking Matthew Golden at the top of the draft, and you're not taking Matthew Golden if they trade down with the Giants, for example, at 3. Like if they were to trade down and maybe trade down again, maybe that's the right place for Golden, but a lot of people are high on him. All right, the third receiver on your list, you mentioned him when Mark called in, Tet McMillan, who has been, I feel like he's been one of those names that's been at the top of the wide receiver draft prospect board for a while. But what do you like about Tet McMillan out of Arizona?
Okay, this was a conversation that I had about Tet McMillan. And this person says he gives me soft vibes. I wonder how he do versus press coverage, like Snead, guys that love to get up in your face. And then I responded, he's not explosive, but he has a big frame. And then they said, well, he reminds them a lot of DJ Moore, a lot of Yak, which he does. And I watched film of him twice, because the first time I watched, I may not have been as in tune as I should have been. It may have been a little bit late and I was watching him. And I'm 51 years old. After a while, my eyes get tired. And I came back and I'm like, man, there's just something about this guy. Like he does it. He has a big frame, but And then I said, okay, let me go back and watch it. So I went back and watched the film. And first thing that came to mind is Mike Evans. That's the first thing that came to mind. Mike Evans. Stature, the way he runs his routes, his ability to go up and get the ball, attack the ball, that big frame. He doesn't have explosiveness. He doesn't have that. And neither does Mike Evans. But I think he makes up for it. He has good speed, but he makes up for it with this big frame. Here's what I put about him. Has some Mike Evans in him. Good speed, high points the ball. He's a combat catcher as well. He's a guy that in double coverage and sometimes he can go up and get the ball because of his big frame. And then I said he can throw the ball as well. I think he ended up throwing a touchdown or 2 during the year. So he not only can he run routes, catch the football, but you can use him with your gimmick plays. He can throw the ball down the field with some accuracy. So that, along with him being a big body guy, I would have liked, I don't know. I don't even know if he ran the 40 at the combine. I need to take a look, but
I don't believe he did.
I don't think to me, if he runs a 4.5 or sub 4.4, then I think he's a top 10 pick. If he doesn't run that, I think he's still I think he's a first round pick, but he may slip down in the draft. But he has all those traits that it's hard to pass up. If you watch this guy, he's Mike Evans. And y'all know how much I like Mike Evans as a player. If you can get a Mike Evans, draft him. Not high, you're not drafting him in the top 10, 12 picks. But if he runs a sub 4.4, you may think about it, But this is he's more in line with Mike Evans than I think anybody else in this year's draft. And I got a couple of more guys on here. One guy that two guys, but one guy I'm really intrigued about.
By the way, McMillan measures 6'4", 219 pounds.
So he's a big guy.
He did not run the 40 at the combine.
Yeah, I need to see him running 40. If he can, watching on film, he has good speed, solid speed, but he has good speed on film. But I want to see it in the 40. I want to see, okay, what I'm seeing, because right now I see him as a 4.5 guy, a high 4.4, 4.5. If he runs 4.41, 4.42, I think he's more inclined to go in the top 10.
615-737-1025. So that's the beginning of Derek's list. He has Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, Matthew Golden from Texas, and Tet McMillan out of Arizona. He's got a couple of more prospects, maybe a couple that could be available to the Titans at some point, maybe on day 2. We'll get to that next. If you have any thoughts on it, 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D Mace Finn Ganadonic 1025, 1063 the game. If we're playing shipping up to Boston, does that mean we have Willie Donick? No. Huh. I thought that was a tell right there.
Not yet.
I just wanted to play it.
Okay, well, I mean, it's fitting. The Predators play the Bruins tonight in Boston. I thought that was Willie's entrance music there for a second. Apparently, he's bringing, when he comes on the program, he's bringing a special guest. We won't spoil it, but he's bringing a special guest along when he starts the show. All right, Derek.
Yes.
We've been talking about wide receivers. You mentioned Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. You mentioned Matthew Golden out of Texas, and you've mentioned Ted McMillan out of Arizona. There are some other prospects you have on your list. Who's next?
Okay, now this prospect sort of he became a prospect after the combine, and obviously, you know, when you run a 40 and it's eye popping, people start to pay attention. And Dante Thornton Jr. is a guy
Out of Tennessee.
That was the talk, and he's a Maryland native
from Baltimore. Yep.
Absolutely. So big ups to him.
Shall be more.
Exactly. But now there's some buzz going on with Dante Thornton, and rightfully so. When you're that big at 6'5" and you run that fast, now his vertical didn't correlate with his 40. He vertical into his 33. You would love to see that higher, especially from a guy that runs a 4.3. Is like the explosiveness should be there in the vertical as well, but it does, for whatever reason, it doesn't correlate. It didn't correlate with his 40. Didn't match his vertical. But I watched film of him last night because he's one of the hot topics outside of Matthew Golden. He's another guy that is sort of climbing in the charts, and I was intrigued by him. For this reason, he reminds me, I look at him, and it's not a DK Metcalf. It's not, because I think DK is just a bigger, more explosive guy. And it seems like DK puts fear in a defensive back. Like, this guy's gonna, beat me up on the line of scrimmage if I press him. He gives off those type of vibes. Dante doesn't, but he has the big stature and the speed to go with it. He reminds me more of a Tyrone Calico than a DK Metcalf.
You're reaching back for that one.
Yes, because Tyrone, big, fast, out of MTSU, big fast. He killed his pro day or the combine, and that's what had him soaring in the draft. Rarely do you see a 6'5" guy running a sub 4.4, 4.3, and Tyrone was able to do it. Now, for whatever reason, injury was a part of it. It never did match up to where he can play consistent football. And ultimately, he played a few years, and that was it. I'm not saying that Dante Thornton's going to be Tyrone Calico, but it sort of reminds me. And then I go back and I look at the film, and I go back and I look at the numbers. Half of his numbers, he had 600 and some yards, averaged a whopping 25 yards per catch. Damn. With 6 touchdowns. Half of those yardage came against UTC, Mississippi State, and our very own Vanderbilt, the Commodores. Now, Vandy, they turned out to be a good team, but their defense more than likely wasn't stopping people every week from scoring points. Now, Vandy found ways to win games, and rightfully so, but their defense let them down more times than not. But they were better than they were the previous year. But half of your yardage came against those teams. You had a good game versus Alabama, 3 for 70, with one long catch, and then the other mediums, you had the longest of 55, and then everything else was intermediate. I don't know how he's going to present himself against top competition. I don't know, because was it the system that didn't allow for the numbers, or was it the person? The system is supposed to allow for guys to catch a bunch of balls. That's what we've seen from that offense over the last 2 years prior to this season. Guys catching a bunch of balls, guys raising their stock in the draft. We've seen it with our own eyes. For this year, it didn't happen that way. Maybe it was because of the quarterback was young. I don't know. But you didn't pop off on the screen throughout the season, other than 3 times, and maybe that 4th against Alabama when you had the longer 55 yards. Now you had a longer 66 against Oklahoma, but you had 2 catches. 2 catches. So I don't know. He's one of those guys that you draft in the 3rd round. He's a developmental guy. You got to develop him because he doesn't have an extensive route catalog or route tree that you saw. It was either post or ends or quick throws to the outside. That's what it was. So I want to see more of him. You know, he's a developmental guy in the sense of he has the tangibles. More importantly, he's big and he's fast. He has good hands. But I want to see him now develop into a wide receiver. I'm not taking him in the 1st round. I may reach for him late in the 2nd, but he's a 3rd round guy to me.
6'5", 205 pounds, hand size 9 5/8. Ran a 4.3 40 right behind Matthew Golden, who ran 4.29. Had a 33-inch vertical jump at the combine. One texter, Caleb, says, as a Tennessee fan, don't fall for the 40 time, D-Mace.
And I know, and that's why I said what I said. Like, he didn't pop up on the screen of, in that offense, but 3 or 4 times during the season. And it wasn't against true top competition that he popped out. Again, I'm not saying he won't ultimately turn into a really good wide receiver, but he's one of those guys that you're going to have to develop. He's going to have to develop.
Let's stay in the SEC. Another popular name among wide receiver prospects, Luther Burden III out of Missouri. Now, I actually found this to be interesting, Derek. Jordan Reed had his latest 2-round mock draft on ESPN.com this morning. And as part of his mock draft, he had a trade between the Titans and the Giants, where the Giants move up to number 1. In his mock trade, he has the Giants giving the Titans their 2nd round pick at number 34. And at number 34, Jordan Reed has the Titans selecting Luther Burden. Now, when I saw this, I was kind of shocked because I thought Luther Burden would be a 1st round prospect. Mm-hmm. He's a top of the 2nd round prospect here, according to Jordan Reed. But Luther Burden III out of Missouri, how does he stack up to you?
Again, I'm going to go back to a original text here. I said, if you had to draft a wide receiver, would you go with T-Mac or Ted McMillan or Luther Burden III? Watching a little film on both, and Luther pops, multiple type player. He said, I like Burden. Go watch the 23 tape. It's much better. Yeah, the 23 tape is much better because the numbers decline in 24 for whatever reason. I don't know. But he does pop out. He's quick. He's elusive. He catches the ball well. Now, he did have some lapses where he had some drops where I'm like that was just a lack of concentration. You got to do better at that. But other than that, he popped. He has good speed. He catches the ball well. He's multiple. Again, this is another one of these guys that is multiple. You can do the way the NFL is using wide receivers, especially a wide receiver with his skill set. They're motioning them. They're giving them those quick flip passes. They're throwing it out to the boundary very quickly to him after he goes in motion, or they're throwing that quick hitch to him. They're getting him the ball in multiple ways. That's what Missouri did with him last year and the year prior, is they gave him the ball in multiple ways. And he was successful at that. I don't know why his numbers dipped to what they did this season, but he still looks explosive on film. And also what's a plus for him, he's a returner. Another guy for a team that is dying and begging for a guy that can catch the ball and get some yardage and get up the field. And I'm talking about from the special team standpoint. What we've seen in our returners the last couple of years hasn't been good. They need a guy like Luther Burden III or like Matthew Golden that not only can be, either a number 1 wide receiver or he can be amongst your top 3 wide receivers, but also he can double as your returner as well, and he can do a really good job at that. So I look at Luther Burden, and he's one of those second-day guys that, hey, listen, I wouldn't mind if you felt you got what you needed in the 1st round, and you're in a position and the receivers are going off, the top receivers are going off the board, and he's still there in the 2nd round, I wouldn't be opposed to them moving up. Now I wouldn't move up like eight or nine spots. No, move up a spot or two. If you traded, but say if you traded out the first round, we traded out the first pick, moved down, and then traded some picks and sort of got some extra picks and moved back in the second round. Well, you can move up a spot or two to get him, or if you see him falling, now you can try to, try to make a trade to move further down. If you see the teams in front of you don't have a need for wide receivers, and still be able to get a guy you're able to get a guy that can be a day one starter. And when I mean starter, in the 3 wide receiver set, but you can get him late in the second round.
I understand that Willie Donick is here. Hello, Willie.
Hello, gentlemen.
No, you sound a little
from Boston.
You sound a little, like you had about 8 cups of coffee. A little chippy, cheery today.
It's a beautiful day in Boston, and I got a chance to see my family here. My parents just had lunch with them, and they're heading back to. Yep, and my daughter, who's going to be graduating from Northeastern University here across downtown,
right up the street from Boston.
So right down the street from where old DJ,
absolutely,
yes, DJ Mason. So they were rivals. Northeastern and BU are the big rivals there. So they were not far from each other for a while. Of course, DJ's already graduated, so Evie will be joining the graduation crew at Fenway Park in May. So looking forward to that. And Evie is going to make in a few minutes. She's seeing off my parents. They're heading back home. They live up in upstate New York, a couple hours away. But she has some very interesting research that she's done on the Gatorade.
Did you in any way influence her?
I did not, and I you'll see what her findings are, and then you guys can put it in there with all of your evidence and research. Even though the case is closed, I'm not reopening the case. I'm not.
Sounds like you're trying to.
Trial.
It sounds like you are, Willie.
I think this is just interesting knowledge of what the people feel in the aftermath of our spirited discussion on is lemon lime Gatorade yellow or green.
The bit that will never die, yellow/green Gatorade. So Derek has unveiled his top wide receiver prospects in this year's draft. Let us know what you think about it. That's 615-737-1025. If there is a wide receiver that you would like the Titans to target in the draft, let us know. Again, 615-737-1025. We'll be right back. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. What could you do with several more $1,000? Or are you searching, if you're a homeowner, for more ways to use your home's equity? Maybe you need some cash for a high interest loan that you have, a car payment, a credit card bill, a personal loan, and you want to take care of that. Your home's equity can be a great tool for that because you're going to have a better rate in many cases. And Loan Pronto has several easy options to let you access that cash. The average homeowner has over $300,000 in equity. And so that's money at your disposal. All you need is the engine to get it going towards you. And Loan Pronto can do that, and they can do it fast. No paperwork, no cumbersome process, no junk fees, often no appraisal. So call right now and get approved in as little as 1 day with no hard credit pull. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063, the game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. All right, Willie. Let us hear about your daughter's take on the Gatorade situation. I know she's there. Let her into this conversation.
Okay. So Evie heard me being harassed by my
Oh wow!
Harassed is strong.
That's
Harassed
a
is
strong
strong.
word, Willie. I see you setting the
stripped me
table
of
already.
A point in our Take It to the Bank contest. I was very disappointed, distraught. She saw this. So she picked up the conversation. I showed her the bottle of Gatorade. And so she decided to try to do some further research. So Evie's sitting right here. So Evie, tell me what you found. What was your findings?
So I took this debate to Instagram and asked some of my friends whether or not they thought the Gatorade was yellow or green, and overwhelmingly people chose yellow. The 4 votes for green include Willie Donick. And yeah, it's looking like the overall consensus is that lemon lime Gatorade is yellow.
So Evie, did he in any way try to sort of nudge you to thinking that was green as opposed to yellow? Did he try to coerce you in any way? Yeah.
No, not really. I mean,
You're on the witness stand now.
He made his argument, but I don't think he has a very strong case, unfortunately. So it was not convincing.
Well,
Just say this,
Evie,
at
we
one
appreciate
point-
the fact that you are not siding with your dad just because he's your flesh and blood.
Exactly.
We appreciate you having a clear mind about this. To be honest with you, I'm surprised. I thought by Willie bringing you on, it was going to be you telling us that it was green. But not only did you tell us it was yellow, it was overwhelmingly yellow.
Only 4 people thought it was green.
Yeah.
And one of them was Willie.
Here are the stats. You know how we love the stats on the show. Evie, at the close of voting yesterday, when you first, what was the count? Not the percentage, but what was the count at the end of yesterday?
Let's look here. At the end of yesterday, it was 30-0. Dad was 0 for 30 with the votes.
Wow.
That says a lot.
Wow. That
You
is
can
a crushing.
You can just imagine the dejection that I felt
Man.
from her friends, her close friends on Instagram that all voted against me. 30-0.
Well, Willie, I hope that has concluded you ever trying to bring this case back up to the Supreme Court, okay?
And this confirms that our ruling that you lose your quarter of a point was within sound reason. So thank you, Evie, for doing the work for us.
Appreciate it.
We weren't able to convince Willie, but it sounds like you were. So thank you very much.
My pleasure, guys.
All right. All right. We can put this to bed finally.
I'm dying on the Lime Hill.
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna die
are.
on the Lime Hill. Maybe I should do the show from Green Hills.
That's the only green you're getting, buddy.
I thought there
need to
might be
take a
some
picture of me.
I thought there might be some green changing hands from Willie to his daughter and
exactly.
trying to coerce her.
Uh.
Maybe my friend Mr. Washington can convince you that this Gatorade is green.
Benjamin.
Benji, that's what we care.
So Willie,
I
we
feel
heard
like I need to get checked.
we heard from Derek, his top wide receiver prospects. I know you joined in that conversation as it was going on, but what did you make of Derek's wide receiver prospect leaderboard there?
Well, I trust D Mace in his evaluation. So D Mace, I know sometimes you're looking at technical things and you're looking at some of the metrics that you get at the combine. So I just want to get your sense of what you value more. Do you value the production more, or what things do you prioritize when you're going through your evaluation process?
One, durability. That's first and foremost. I think in today's game, you have to show a level of durability. You have to be able to play through things. So if I'm a scout, I'm looking at all of that first. Is he on the field more times than not? Can you count on him? And then two, I think it's not what is your playing speed? Because your playing speed and your 40-yard dash can look a little bit different. That's what I talked about with Ted McMillan, that I wanted to see, like, on film, it looks like he has good speed, but I want to see if that matches his 40. Like, to me, good speed for a guy 6'5" is that is around a sub, maybe a 4.5 to a 4.45 in between there. That's good speed. Now, if he runs faster than that, then he shoots up in the draft, and he may shoot up over Matthew Golden if he can run a low 4.4, like a 4.4 flat, somewhere around there. He just may, and that's because of his size and size only. But he would sort of match him with the speed. So that's what I'm looking for. Does his 40 match his playing speed? And then in today's game, especially in the NFL, you got to make combative catches. You have to. This league is too fast, too physical. Guys are too good. You're not getting completely open like you were in college. Are you a good combative catcher? And to me, the guys that I talked about, they catch the ball well when others are around. So those are things that I'm looking for. And then also, one of the things is are you a returner? Because I think really good returners can become really good pass catchers to great pass catchers, because the vision you have to have as a returner, the ability to make the cuts, to get in and out, to see a hole, hit it, and go north and south. That's what we talk about a lot as a receiver, getting north and south. Don't mess around going side to side, because you're allowing everybody to converge on you. As a punt returner, you're usually going north to south. And if you're good at that, you can catch the ball well. It usually translates when you have the ball in your hands as a wide receiver. You're thinking more north-south than anything. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at, when I'm evaluating the receiver, how he gets in and out of his breaks, how he's seeing the field as he's moving. Is he running full speed as he's seeing the field, or is he kind of coasting, trying to figure it out? I want a guy that can go full speed and still be able to read the field as you're running, because it's not what you see before the ball is high, is what you see after that. Teams usually are rotating in the back end. So if you're able to play full speed and still read the defense, that's why I look at a guy like Matthew Golden as a zone buster, because he's reading it as he's running full speed, and he's finding open holes within the defense. Because listen, in college, they're not playing much man-to-man because they just don't have the athletes to do that on a game in and game out basis. They're in a lot of zones. So if you can read that zone very quickly, find the spaces and holes in there, that's a plus for me. Those are the things that I'm looking for.
Willie, we had Tim Hasselbeck on earlier in the program, talked about the news of Sam Darnold unlikely to be franchise tagged by the Minnesota Vikings. That deadline, by the way, is 3:00 Central, so fast approaching. And I asked him the question, if it were up to you, well, let me rephrase that. I asked him the question, who is going to be better 3 years from now, Sam Darnold or Cam Ward? And he sided with Sam Darnold because he's shown he can do it at the NFL level. He's still young. There's a lot of tantalizing aspects of Cam Ward. We heard Teron Davenport yesterday. The Titans are high on Cam Ward. A lot of teams seem to be high on Cam Ward. But he would rather put his stock in Darnold, knowing that Darnold has shown he could do it at the NFL level. I want to get your thoughts on that.
I'm still not sure that this was a smart move by the Vikings, in my opinion, to not tag Darnold. I think it's a little risky to put all your faith in J.J. McCarthy for a team that, did some really encouraging things last year, and now you don't really know exactly what you're going to get from quarterback play. So on the flip side, if you're a team looking for a quarterback and you see that the Vikings don't keep Sam Darnold, what does that say about what they think of Sam Darnold? I'm not sure. Then I'm ready to turn around and overpay to get what it's going to take to sign him. So with Stafford and Carr staying put and Darnold hitting the free agent market, I think he's in a great position to get way overpaid, which may not be the best thing for Sam Darnold, right? But as we talked about yesterday, the key dynamic for the Titans, I think, is either you love Cam Ward so much that you can't pass him up, or 2, 3, 4 other teams looking for a quarterback get enticed with Cam Ward and overpay you for the first pick. To me, that's what the Titans should be shooting for, because I still am skeptical that any first pick in the draft, unless he is, I'm not going to use the G word, not going to do it.
Can't do it.
Nope.
Can't do it. Not allowed to do it. But if he's that special, that's one thing. But if he's just, for lack of a better term, your run-of-the-mill best quarterback available, and quarterbacks usually get picked high, those quarterbacks tend to have a rough time going into a situation where the Titans are with their roster. It's not a great position to succeed. So I'm looking to build leverage for the first overall pick.
Certainly sounds like the Giants are the team that most people peg as the one that will move up from 3 to 1 with the Titans. So we'll see how desperate they are.
I think some others might join the party before it's all over. If the Cam Ward, what the music to my ears, if I'm the Titans, is that Cam Ward's stock appeared to really go up during the combine. That's what you want. You want momentum. You want everybody talking about him. You want other teams to jump in and say, hey, what would it take for us to get Cam Ward?
615-737-1025. Speaking of deadlines, we've talked about the franchise tag deadline, which is in about 2 hours. 3 days from now, it's the NHL trade deadline. The Predators have already made one move. Who could be next out the door? Some comments from our very good friend Elliot Freeman. We'll discuss those next. Willie Dunnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
All right, let's talk League Company. We're about to talk some Predators here as the trade deadline approaches. That will be Friday afternoon. And Nashville will take on the Boston Bruins tonight. Boston is banged up, a bubble team. They made a trade earlier today. And so there's been a lot of discussion going on around the NHL. So we'll have all the coverage tonight. Max Hers will be on the call. We'll have our pregame show starting at 5 o'clock, Nashville and Boston. In the meantime, as League Company is the title sponsor of our radio coverage here on 102.5 The Game, they're also doing their thing. It's getting time with baseball starting up, the spring sports starting up. You know you're getting outside. The weather's going to get warmer. That should bring you to this. Have you had your air conditioning unit checked anytime recently? If you haven't, it's time to pick up the phone and call League Company, 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com. They'll get out there, they'll check on it, and they'll find out if it's working efficiently or if you need some repairs. And it's better to do those repairs now than when it's in the middle of the summer and it goes kaput on you and it's 95 degrees out there. So call League Company, start that relationship. They have so many great services for you. 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Predators back in action tonight, wrapping up their road trip in Boston against the Bruins. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5. Of course, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The NHL trade deadline is 3 days away. It is Friday, and the Predators have made one major trade, trading Gus Nyquist over the weekend to the Minnesota Wild. But we anticipate more moves being made between now and Friday. I don't know if Jared has Barry Trotz on today. It is Tuesday. He does not have
I
Barry.
believe Barry Trotz this week. I believe this is right, that he's going to join Jared after the trade deadline is over to sort of summarize what they do. I think that's the game plan.
Got it. Well, we won't hear from Barry Trotz, I guess, before the NHL trade deadline on Friday. But we did hear from Elliot Freeman, our friend who joins us every Thursday on this program. On his 32 Thoughts podcast, the latest episode debuted yesterday, or premiered yesterday, I should say. And he went through every team in the NHL and what he anticipates from those teams at the trade deadline. So, of course, we skipped to the part about the Predators. And there are some interesting things that he said. So let's start with Elliot Freeman on players from the Predators that are on his radar before the trade deadline.
A couple guys I am wondering about. Thomas Novak. They signed him before the trade deadline last year to an extension. Even though teams were interested, they liked him. He's signed for 2 more years at 3.5. He's had a tough season. But there was a lot of interest in this player a year ago. That's one guy I'm wondering about. Colton Sissons, another year, just under $3 million. You know, the kind of versatile forward that teams really like. You know, Michael McCarron, another year, under $1 million. I think he's a name that people have looked at. Luke Shen, 1 more year, 2.75. Those are the kinds of names that I think are going around there.
That was Elliot Freeman on the 32 Thoughts podcast. And of course, we'll talk to Elliot on Thursday. So we've talked about Michael McCarron. We've talked about Colton Sissons. Tommy Novak is a name, Willie, I've seen out there. There was a lot of talk about Tommy Novak around this time last year because he was unsigned. And if I recall correctly, Barry Trotz said to Jared that if they couldn't get a deal done by the deadline, they might have to move him. And there seemed to be a lot of interest in Tommy Novak last season. They signed him. It has not worked out for Tommy Novak this season. I go back to his performance in the playoff series last spring against the Vancouver Canucks. He was uninspiring at best. So I'm curious if Tommy Novak could be a prime change of scenery candidate. We see these trades around the NHL trade deadline. Tommy Novak, a relatively inexperienced NHL player, just because he's been a full-time player now for only a couple of years, but has shown he can be an effective and efficient point producer. It just hasn't worked out this season. Do you think Tommy Novak, Willie, could be on the move before Friday?
I think I wouldn't rule it out. I think if you take a look at Novak's recent play, he started to kick in a little bit more offense. He's scoring a little bit more at the rate that they thought he would at the start of the season. But the big part of this chapter in his career is that I think they gave him enough rope. And look, with them, if they keep him, I think they're going to continue to give him every opportunity to show that he can play a second line center role. But I think they've given him enough opportunity to where they've made the assessment that on a team that's contending and a team that can win, he doesn't look like he's cut out to be a number 2 center that can do all those things. Now, where he can be effective, and this is where you get the price, right? And this is where, with the cap going up, a team might look at it this way and say, here's a guy that has shown that he can be a really good sneaky source of offense, which is not always easy to find. And he could, if you have room for him lower in your lineup, where he's not having to take all of the responsibilities of a number 2 center, then he can be what he was for the Predators last year, a pretty effective player in the role that he was in. Does that make sense? Because it's a little bit to me like a Matt Duchene, where Matt Duchene at $8 million as your number one center was a disappointment. Matt Duchene as a $3 million center surrounded by other good players and not taking up a lot of cap space is a very effective player, right? He's going to cash in again this summer for somebody, whether he stays with Dallas or goes somewhere else. So I do think that's the stock that Tommy Novak brings to the table, even though he has not had a great season, but that would put him on a list of pretty much every Predator this year. So I think you touched on it, Adam. I'm intrigued about a change of scenery. Here's a guy that hasn't had a good year for our team. Let's trade him to your team for a guy in the same position, and maybe in the new spot we'll both be happy.
Elliot Friedman also discussed something that Barry Trotz mentioned with Jared last week about having conversations with the team leaders, those players, presumably the ones with the no movement clauses and such in their contracts. And Barry Trotz said to Jared that in those conversations, he said to the players, hey, if you want to be part of the solution, great. If you don't want to be a part of the solution, let me know and I'll try to move you. And Barry Trotz certainly made it sound like there was buy-in from those top players. Here's what Elliot Friedman said about the same subject.
I've heard, I followed it up. I heard that, I asked around, and I heard that a lot of his core guys, basically all of them said, yeah, we're embarrassed, but we want to fix this. And so I don't think there's anybody there, as far as I know, I don't think there's anybody there who is protected or is part of their core who's asked out. I think, we reported a while ago that even though he doesn't have a no trade, they're treating O'Reilly like he does. And I have no reason to believe as we record this that O'Reilly has changed his mind on being in Nashville. So I think a lot of those key guys are going to be there.
That was Elliot Friedman on the top players. And he mentions Ryan O'Reilly. And I know it might be apples to oranges, Willie, because they play different positions. But when I saw that the Predators were able to get a second-round pick for Gus Nyquist, which exceeded my expectations on what the Predators could receive for Nyquist, I thought to myself, what would a team be willing to give up for Ryan O'Reilly, considering what the center market is, the fact that he's under contract for 2 more years after this one. He's a proven playoff performer, a Stanley Cup winner, a Conn Smythe Trophy winner. It got me wondering if there is a team over the next 3 days who might decide that they really love Ryan O'Reilly and what they might give up to get him. Now, it sounds like Ryan O'Reilly, and it sounds like Ryan O'Reilly, because I believe Elliot mentioned this to us last week. He hasn't been given any indication that O'Reilly wants out, that he thinks Riley's going to be moved. But I do wonder if the next couple of days that changes in terms of a team wanting to pony up for O'Reilly.
That it's a good question, because another thing that I heard Elliot say on his assessment of all 32 teams, and it was a long podcast, and I will not lie, I did turn it up to 1.75 speed so I could get through more of the teams in the amount of time I had to listen. I couldn't sit there for 2.5 hours, which is the entire NHL. But he said that Braden Shen, Luke's brother Braden, who plays for the Blues, he's the captain. He may well have been front and center on the market a couple weeks ago, but the Blues have made a little surge here, and they have a chance to get into the playoffs. And so he may not be available. And so that would make a guy like Ryan O'Reilly even more attractive if his name were actually out there. But I think this, again, comes back to Barry Trotz's decision right now. His mindset is, number one, if Ryan O'Reilly isn't looking to go anywhere, I've got to weigh that. And number two, if Barry Trotz still has the vision, which there's no reason for us to believe that he doesn't, a vision of being a playoff team next year, then you're hard-pressed to find a solution of that without Ryan O'Reilly in that equation, just where their centers are. Ryan O'Reilly, forget about his goals and assists. He does so many things that keep a team connected in the position he plays, face-offs, checking the other team's top players, penalty killing, power play. He does all of the little things. And without him in there next year, who would replace that? I don't think there's anybody that they have on the current roster that would come anywhere close. And as we've talked about, people just don't trade frontline centers for a cheap price. They're just not out there very much. And I don't see one in the system right now. Fedor Svechkov, I think someday could be a really good center in the league, but you see him going through the growing pains. He can flash some really good stuff. He can also be a little bit overmatched on certain nights by teams that have really good players down the middle. So it's a work in progress. So if your hope is to bounce back next year, I'm not sure how you can do it without O'Reilly in there.
There was one other thing that he discussed, and it's the hottest topic of conversation, I would say, around these parts. The fate of Andrew Brunette as Predators coach. Barry Trotz said with Jared that he's going to ride this thing out until the end of the season and then evaluate. We talked about this yesterday a little bit more, but here's what Elliot Freeman said about the future of Andrew Brunette with the Predators.
Now, the other thing is he did kind of open up a bit the door on Andrew Brunette. And, you know, he really stuck with Brunette this year. He was loyal to him. The one thing he did say is that we have to make sure that next year everybody's on the same page. And I think what he's talking about there is there an understanding of the way this team has to play between the players and the coaching staff to maximize success. You know, Brunette made some changes this year. He did change his system, but I think there's got to be a bigger conversation, or there will be a bigger conversation about, is everybody on the same page about the way they want to play? So that's going to be another thing to keep an eye on.
So, Derek, you asked the question yesterday with the Gus Nyquist trade. Are the Predators putting Andrew Brunette in the best position to show that he is the solution to these problems by trading away a veteran player, albeit a veteran player who has struggled this season? But as Elliot said there, based on what Barry Trotz said to Jared, considering how steadfast Barry Trotz was in his support of Andrew Brunette, it sounds like maybe there's been a slight shift in that lately.
I think it's the same thing that happened to the last head coach
with John Hines.
John Hines, where it's okay. Let me evaluate the season as it's going, and then as I'm evaluating, make my determination based on what I'm seeing. I'm not going to be, swayed by each and every game or each and every outing. I'm going to allow the process to play itself out. But, as I'm watching, it's helping me form my decision, which I'm going to make at the end of the year. I think he's going to use the same sort of patience that he used with John Hines during the season. And then I think he's going to take the same approach and patience that he did with John Hines after the season, he will do with Coach Bruno, because that just seems like who Barry Trotz is. If he's going to make a decision, it's going to be a well thought out decision before he makes it. But, this is why I asked the question, because if you want to see progression, if you want to see development in your team, but then you start trading away pieces, it's hard to then continue to see that development. So actually, what are you looking for when that does happen? Does that put the head coach more in a position where you're thinking, I'm going to go away from him and get another coach? Or does it put you closer to saying, you know what, I am going to get the guys for you as the season, in this upcoming off season? I'm sort of purging some guys, and then we're going to reconvene and we're going to attack it as a team once again. So it could be either one or two ways. But Barry's always been upfront, and he's not going to sugarcoat it. And if he feels there's a shift, you're going to feel it as well.
615-737-1025. Any thoughts on the NHL trade deadline? That is Friday afternoon. The Predators are back in action tonight against the Boston Bruins to wrap up their road trip. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5, right here on 102.5, 106.3. The Game, of course, you can also watch the game on FanDuel Sports Network with our very own Willie Donick and Chris Mason. Coming up next, some major breaking news in the NFL. We'll share that with you. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3. The Game.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time now. If you have set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a goal to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. But I got a solution for you, because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. You got to have more than just one option or one approach, people. And their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge, and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Some major breaking news in the NFL, according to Adam Schefter. The Philadelphia Eagles are rewarding Saquon Barkley with a 2-year, $41.2 million contract extension that makes him the highest paid running back in NFL history. Per sources, the deal makes Barkley the NFL's first $20 million plus per year running back. Barkley also has the ability to earn an additional $15 million in incentives and escalators. The deal includes $36 million fully guaranteed at signing. The Eagles are taking the rare step of extending Barkley 1 year into his 3-year deal, and in the same league year in which they signed him to the initial contract. So Saquon Barkley, the highest paid running back now in NFL history.
I tell you who this is good for, Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry is a free agent this season. And
He has 1 more year.
He has 1 more year. They're going to be looking at. Didn't DeCosta say that they were looking to? I think I heard DeCosta was looking to sign an extension with Derrick Henry.
I think so.
Now, this is big for Derrick Henry because Derrick Henry had the same type of season that Saquon Barkley had, you know, as far as his impact on the game. And he was only second behind Saquon Barkley in rushing yards. So these were the top 2 backs. It'll be interesting to see what Derrick Henry gets now, because I know that Baltimore wants to extend the contract, but will they take that rare step that Philadelphia did at putting Derrick Henry amongst, you know, the nearly $20 million players that are now in the NFL? Saquon has reached that mark now. First time in NFL history that a running back has made that much. How close can Derrick Henry come to that number? Because frankly, Baltimore is right where Philadelphia was last year. They are right on the doorstep. And they are going to need a guy like Derrick Henry back for another season. So what is the incentive was this an incentive for you, Baltimore, to go out now and sign Derrick Henry to a 2-year extension? He may not get 20 million, but say he gets closer to that. You know, no longer is he playing for the $8, $9, or $10 million. Now it ups the ante because of what Saquon did. In his deal, he was able to sign.
Isn't it crazy how the performance of 2 running backs, really, Henry and Barkley, may have helped all the running backs with the way that they suddenly have been resurgent for the right teams. And I'm curious if this starts the trend, or teams will stick to their guns in the way that they've done it probably in the last, 10 years, of saying, let's not pay the big money to the running backs. Do they just consider Barkley and Henry that special, or are they just going to think the position has been a little bit undervalued and they're going to rethink the philosophy?
Yeah, it reminds me of it's at least these 2 guys, and I know I can't say the G word, but it reminds me of like an old Western when that one guy comes through town and it's something you've never seen before, and he kind of looks different from everybody else, and he walks different, and he orders his drink at the saloon different, and he opens up the doors, the 2 flapping doors, different from everybody else, and everybody's looking at him like, wow, that guy's different. I want to be him. This is what Saquon and Derrick Henry, more so Saquon because of the 20 million he has gotten. He's one of those guys now. He's one of those rare drifters that come through town, and they try to keep him in the town because everything he does is just so magnificent.
We all strive to have a year in our lives like the one Saquon Barkley did.
Is that a good way of describing it without having to use the G word?
Not being able to use the G word definitely has made us rethink.
I'm trying to expand your vocabulary.
Yes, and I like it. I thank you for that.
I want to make you guys think on this show.
I was looking for another word for generational.
Oh, you said it!
Oh my goodness! No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't saying it as describing a player.
Yeah, but he said it.
I was just saying another word to describe that.
Yeah. We'll let you have that one.
We'll let you have that one. I'll have to get a studio thesaurus. We could all
Yes.
use one. Quickly back to our Predators conversation. We had one texter text in saying, "I hate to say it, but Trotz has put this team in turmoil. I really don't trust or want him to do anything else." And one thing that I find interesting about Barry Trotz in terms of him in this role in this city, because when Barry Trotz came back to Nashville, right? Everyone was so excited. Everybody around here loves Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz has meant so much to this city and, of course, the Predators organization. So the one thing I thought about was at the beginning of his time, things were going well, right? Shortly after the Predators announced the succession plan, they sell off at the deadline. They trade Matthias Ekholm and Tanner Jeannot and Nino Niederreiter and Mikael Granlund. And they get a boatload of assets. Then Barry Trotz, his first two official acts as GM. He trades Ryan Johansson and he buys out Matt Duchene. And those, the Johansson thing has certainly worked out. Duchene has been a productive player for the Stars, but he's been in a different role for the Stars, a secondary role for the Stars that's more suited for him than what he was asked to do here with the money he was being paid. And last year, they bring in Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist and Luke Shen. They make the playoffs unexpectedly. Like everything was coming up roses for Barry Trotz. And even this summer, with the moves they made in free agency that a lot of people loved. But now it's interesting, Willie. We're seeing this is the first time that Barry Trotz, as general manager, is experiencing some uneasiness with the fan base that loves him so much. I find this dynamic to be really interesting.
Yeah, it's the first time he's struggled in this new position. And yeah, I think we've probably all experienced something like this in our lives, but it just looks like to me things didn't get off to a good start. They didn't have a lot of cap space. So it's like he started one move and then it led to another move and another move. But instead of fixing things, it was almost like he pulled the thread and things started unraveling. And each move unraveled things a little bit more. And you look back and say, boy, none of this has worked out. And the caller, it just made me think of this because the caller said, I don't want him to do anything else, right? Because that's kind of the thought I'm sure he had when he texted that is, you don't want to see it unravel anymore, especially if you want to just start fresh next year with the same nucleus of players and hope that it goes better, which, that they're not going to do. They've got to fix holes that they've discovered, the flaws in this team over the course of the year. So they'll have free agency and they'll have a lot of draft capital and things like that. And who knows, they might have a very high first pick that could fit into the equation next year, depending on just how high they end up in the draft. So he does have to weigh on that. He does have to think about that, right? Is Michael McCarron, is Colton Sissons, is Luke Shen, are these guys you think are a big part of next year's team, or is what you might get offered for one of those guys more valuable than keeping them around? All those guys have really good intangibles. They're good role players on the right team. To me, it's all going to start with how do you reinvigorate Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg, Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos. Those are the guys that have to play well for this team to have a chance. It almost doesn't matter who the other guys are. It does, because those guys need to support. But if those guys don't have good years next year, then I'll show you a Predator team that's going to struggle.
Scott is in Hendersonville on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Scott, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yes, I did have a Preds question. It was real quick. The Saquon Barkley deal also probably really helps Ashton Genty. I mean, we might see running backs getting drafted in the first round again. But my question, I guess it goes back to, we talked about, is Bruno the problem? Is the system the problem? you were just saying with Roman Yossi. I mean, Roman Yossi looked a lot better when he could skate the puck up the ice and start the offense, as opposed to immediately getting it off his stick and passing it up. The system. There's been a lot of struggle with guys adapting to this system, and a lot of bad turnovers, which will lead to high chance scoring. For the high percentage scoring chances for the other team. My question is, and I don't know, but shouldn't they be running the same system in Milwaukee? So if we're going to run this Bruno system, shouldn't they be teaching it there? And so when guys are promoted, they're familiar with it, and we don't see the abominable, defensive play where the new defenseman, is turning it over immediately and leading to, odd man rushes or, breakaways, basically. I don't know what the thought has been in Milwaukee. I think they kind of tried to mirror what Hines was doing when he was coach. But, if we're going to stick with this Bruno system, shouldn't we change up how Milwaukee does things? I'll let you go from there.
Thanks for the call, Scott. Why don't you handle that one, Willie?
It's a difficult question for me to answer because I don't know all the intricacies of what Carl Taylor is asked to do. I do think in a general sense, you would like to have your AHL team play similar to your NHL team. But as the caller kind of pointed out, Carl Taylor was the coach when was the coach at Milwaukee when John Hines was the Predators head coach. And he's now the head coach when Andrew Brunette is the head coach. And I'm trying to think back. Carl Taylor might have started at the Predators still when Peter Laviolette was the coach. He's been there for a while. So is he supposed to change his system completely? I mean, Carl Taylor aspires to be an NHL coach, so he needs to win games. So I don't know what the edict is from the top of, hey, Carl, you've got to play exactly how the NHL team is playing. I think in an ideal sense, that's what you would do. But you'd have to ask Carl Taylor, I think, how he tries to do that. I don't know whether they do or don't. So I can't really answer that question fully. But the system question is a fair one. And I think that is something that Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette are wrestling with as they move forward down the stretch here of what's the right way to play. And you heard Elliott say it. What's the right way to play to give this team the best chance to win with the players that they have?
615-737-1025. If you have any thoughts on Saquon Barkley's record-breaking contract, the Predators ahead of the trade deadline, the quarterback market, the franchise tag deadline is an hour and a half away, roughly. Anything on your mind, let us know. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, Vanderbilt is back in action tonight against a desperate team. We will discuss that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, as you just heard Kevin Ingram say there. The Vanderbilt Commodores are back in action tonight. A late tip-off, a 9 o'clock tip-off at Memorial Gym against the Arkansas Razorbacks. The pregame show starts at 8:30. Coverage available on 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. Our resident bracketologist, Joe Rexrode, and his latest bracket watch on The Athletic has Vanderbilt. Listen to this, guys. There's a lot of things happening here. Listen to this. According to Joe Rexrode, Vanderbilt, a 9 seed in the East region, facing in the first round the 2-time defending national champion UConn Huskies, who have had a rough season, to say the least. And if Vanderbilt were to survive that, according to Joe Rexrode, Vanderbilt and Duke in the second round of the playoff, the second round of the college basketball.
Bring it on. Let's go.
Duke versus
Donick versus
Vandy.
Vingan.
Duke versus Vanderbilt. How would that happen? How would that go on this show, you think?
I think
Oh, man, we would have some fun with that.
Schoolyard bash. Schoolyard bash.
Nerd fight. Nerd fight.
What are you saying? Just because we both wear big glasses means we're nerds?
Maybe.
Derek wears black rimmed glasses too.
But
he's cool.
I didn't go to Vandy, nor did I go to Duke.
Well, I didn't go to
Yeah,
Duke
you didn't
either.
go to Duke, but that's your team.
Yes.
That's your team. So
You use big words. You're
yeah, and you use big words.
All right,
Yeah.
whatever.
I'll tell you what, Duke looks pretty good. They were on they've been on ESPN, I feel like, every game, and they have just destroyed teams one by one. The last 2 or 3 times I've watched them, they won like 35. And bringing it back to my family, Evie Donick, who performed on the show earlier today, a cameo role, just buried her dad in front of the whole live audience with her
She did a great job.
Instagram poll
That was what we call
about the lemon lime Gatorade.
Yes, by the way,
Jeez.
that's what we call in the wrestling business a swerve.
Mm.
Because I was not expecting that. I thought the fact that you were bringing Evie on was to tell us that she agreed with you that it was green Gatorade and she had evidence to back that up. But then when she came on and said, "No, it's yellow," and everybody thinks it's yellow, I was shocked.
I feel like it's a generational thing. We got a generation problem here. But one of her close friends that she went to high school with at the University School of Nashville is a Duke player. She played high school ball. A Duke student. She played high school ball for USN. Good all-around athlete. And she was in the Cameron Crazies last night and got on the Jumbotron and sent Evie a picture of her right in the middle of the mix. So the Cameron Crazies have had a good year because they've been undefeated at home and they've been awesome. And they in a year where the ACC is very thin, they have stood out. And I was watching some of Lunardi's stuff last night to go along with what Joe was doing. And it sure does look like Duke is clear cut, going to be a 1 seed. We know Auburn's a 1. It really looks like Houston, who won last night, is got a lockdown on the 1. And then it's between basically 3 SEC schools:
Tennessee, Alabama, and Florida.
And Florida for that last 1 seed, which really builds some drama for next week's SEC tournament.
Yes, and by the way, the SEC tournament, which of course will be held here at Bridgestone Arena. I know that I try not to do this. I do this a lot, but I try not to do it if the playoffs started today. but the Tennessean has a story of what the SEC bracket would look like in the tournament if it was based on the standings from today. And Vanderbilt would be a 10 seed in the SEC tournament, playing the 15th seeded LSU Tigers in the opening round of the tournament. If they were to win that game, they would advance to play Ole Miss, who would be the 7th seed in the next round. But Vanderbilt back in action tonight again, a late tip-off of 9 o'clock, which you can hear on 94.9 The Fan, against an Arkansas team that's desperate. They need to win both of their remaining games. I think they have 2 games left. They play Vanderbilt, so they need to win the remaining games, and they probably need to make a little run in the SEC tournament, not win the SEC tournament, but probably make a little run. So they will be playing a desperate Arkansas team tonight, Willie, which is a good thing for a team that we've all said, hey, they're in. Doesn't matter what happens with Vanderbilt. They've punched their ticket. But they're playing a team that needs to win, which should keep them engaged.
Yeah, I'll give you the Coach Willie angle, and D-Mays can probably predict it, right? I think Mark Byington is going to be selling this, right? Everybody on the campus since Saturday has been saying, guys, what a great job. You guys you're in, you did it. Great wins. I was there at the Missouri game. Hey, I was there at the Ole Miss game. I was watching on TV when you guys went to Texas A&M. Congratulations. And so if you are exhaling and you relax against, as Adam said, a desperate team playing for their season, you're susceptible. So I think that's the test for Mark Byington and this team. That's the challenge tonight. Can you stay sharp? Can you keep the edge? And as you mentioned, Adam, I think you're playing to try to stay off of that 8 versus 9 kind of game. Like who would want to play at UConn in the first game, and then if you win, you have to play a 1 seed, right? Not that the 2 seeds are any picnic, but of course all 4 of those 1 seeds, like you could be Auburn in the second round, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want that, right?
No,
so you're trying to continue to improve and play well down the stretch. Arkansas is a dangerous team. They're very streaky. They just had a big hiccup by losing at South Carolina. And that's something that I think they have struggled with. They're a little up and down on offense. They played a couple of great road games at Kentucky where they stunned everybody when Coach Cal got booed. I think they really played for their coach. They won at Rupp, and then they turned around and won at Texas in their next game. But on the road, other than that, they haven't played great, especially offensively. But they're big. And D-Mays, you mentioned every time how undersized Vanderbilt is. They've got that 7'2" guy, Arkansas, who can go out and shoot it, right? So it's a weird matchup. They're a good shot blocking team, so it may not be easy for Vanderbilt's 6'7" guys to get work done in the paint. Arkansas is a really good defensive team that's going to be playing with everything they got tonight.
Now, based upon Joe Rexrode bracket, he has them in the East region. Now, is it more than likely they'll be in the East region? Yeah. But Vandy's in a position right now because of the way they plan. They can't escape neither the first seed or the second seed in that East region unless they slip down to, even if they slip down to a number 3 seed, meaning a number 11 seed. They still, based upon Joe's bracketology, they would have Oregon, and then they can sort of get away from Alabama at least for a round because they would play the winner between Chattanooga and St. John's. And as we know, once you get into March Madness, these are the matchups that you look at and you see more than likely there will be an upset, a 14 over a 3. So that 8 and 9, like you said, that's dicey. That is dicey. But if you slip to an 11 seed, then I think that bodes well just by how they're seeding a team. It bodes well for you, Vanderbilt, moving forward. But listen, when it comes to Vanderbilt, you're right, Willie. They can't exhale and relax.
Right. You cannot avoid. You have to avoid that, or else it will be that would be the trap to fall into. Now,
Exactly.
D-Base, you just mentioned something else that I think is another thing to watch. Is we know there's going to be minimum 11 teams, right?
Yeah.
But probably 12, maybe 13. Everybody talks about that every week. But how is the committee going to disperse them across the bracket, right? So not everybody's going to stay in this region, right? In the South or the East. Somebody, more than one team is going to be sent out west for sure. So I don't know if I've always wondered how the committee even tries to do that. And especially if you're going to be an 8, 9, 10 seed or 7 seed, you don't really have any control over that. I don't think. Like, would you rather be a 7 out west or an 8 closer to home? These are all the things that I'm sure the committee weighs.
You know what?
All you can do is control what you can
Exactly.
control.
Just go out
You've
and
got
win
your
ball
2
games.
games left here. And this is, look, Arkansas is rated very close to Vanderbilt. I'm looking at Ken Palm.
Mhm.
Vanderbilt's 38, Arkansas 41. So this is a
They're not
quad
too
1
far
kind of
behind.
game. This is another win that is not just, hey, let's hold serve against it. This is a good team that they're playing that absolutely could beat you. if you're not on it. We know Vanderbilt's margin for error is not great.
Mhm.
It's not like they just overpower teams. They've got to out execute. They've got to be sharp. So I think this is a great test for them tonight.
To me, once they got it, to me, winning the remainder 2 games is good, but I think they have to, if it can set up perfectly or more ideal for them in the SEC tournament if they're a lower seed. And then they may, they can win possibly 2 games. And sort of find themselves in a situation where, if they can play, depending on how they're calling the game, I think that's what it is with Vanderbilt. Because depending on how they call the game, and this is more importantly in the big dance, depending on how they call a game during March Madness, that will, to me, that will show or give me an idea how far Vanderbilt can go in this tournament. Because if they allow them to play physical basketball, then Vanderbilt can go a little bit further, I think. But if they start with these quick whistles, then Vanderbilt, I believe, is a quick out because of the team having the lack of size in the middle. If they allow them to play and allow some of these fouls or these, playing that back and forth rough basketball, if they allow that physical basketball, then I think Vandy has an opportunity to go a little bit further in the tournament. But if they don't, I can see this as being a quick out for Vandy, because that's one thing that Vandy does really well, is if you get them in a physical type of game, they can play that game with you, but they can't play the game outside of that. It's hard for them to play the game outside of that because the lack of size that they don't have.
Some other interesting SEC matchups tonight. Number 1, Auburn at number 22, Texas A&M. Texas at number 25, Mississippi State. That is tonight as well. Tomorrow, a big matchup. Number 5, Florida at number 7, Alabama. That is a huge game. And then Tennessee on the road tomorrow at Ole Miss. So the SEC tournament will be here next week at Bridgestone Arena. Can't wait for that. The Nashville Predators are back in action tonight against the Boston Bruins. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Of course, you can catch Willie Donick live on FanDuel Sports Network for the call on television. But that will do it for us today. Stillman and Company coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful Tuesday. Peace.